The hidden path. Why most never progress beyond beginner. There exists an ancient mystery that distinguishes those who learn from those who master. Today you'll uncover why most individuals never advance beyond the novice level in anything they undertake in existence. Have you ever observed how certain individuals master any subject they commit their consciousness to? They learn an instrument within months. They master a new language within a year. They construct businesses from nothing, while others spend eternity attempting to figure things out. What do many individuals think? Oh, these individuals are talented. This individual was born with a gift for this task. You've probably heard someone declare this type of thing. Many individuals use this justification to stop attempting. Certain individuals think, I don't possess the gift, so it's impossible for me to master this subject. That's the biggest falsehood anyone can tell themselves. Now, do you understand what individuals who master anything in brief time have in common? What they possess is something that you were never taught in school, in college, in any online course you've ever purchased. In feudal Japan, there existed a framework of apprenticeship so powerful that it transformed common peasants into lethal warriors, mediocre artisans into masters whose work lasted centuries. This framework had nothing to do with intelligence or natural talent. It had everything to do with understanding the three invisible stages that separate the amateur from the master. They called this framework Shuhari. When you understand how it operates, you stop being that individual who starts 1,000 things and finishes none. You become someone who masters what they want when they want. However, it comes at a cost. Learning this framework will require you to accept something your ego will hate to hear. Before I demonstrate this complete framework, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like it below, and tell me in the comments, what skill do you most want to master in your existence? Guitar, programming, a new language? Feel free to comment. I appreciate reading and interacting with you in the comments. Now, back to the video. Chapter 1. The Lost Apprentice. The narrative I'm about to tell you took place in feudal Japan. A youth named Yamato had a dream that consumed his every thought, to become a samurai. He wasn't born into a samurai family. He had no lineage, no name, nothing but an obsession that burned within him like fire. While other village boys accepted their fates as farmers and merchants, Yamato spent hours watching the samurai as they passed by on the road. The way they moved, the discipline in their gaze, the respect they commanded without saying a word. He wanted this more than he wanted to breathe. At 16, Yamato picked up a wooden sword and began training alone. He woke before sunrise and practiced the moves he'd seen the samurai perform: horizontal strikes, vertical strikes, thrusts, hours and hours every day. 6 months later, he hadn't improved at all. His movements felt off. His body wasn't responding the way he imagined. The sword felt too heavy, too clumsy. The more he practiced, the more frustrated he became. He tried to study strategy by reading ancient manuscripts about famous battles. He memorized the names of all the classical techniques. He learned about Bushido, the samurai code of honor. He had no shortage of knowledge. However, when he picked up the sword, it was as if all that knowledge evaporated. A whole year passed. Yamato remained just a village boy with a wooden sword and an impossible dream, until the day everything changed. Chapter 2. The Meeting. One afternoon, Yamato was practicing near the forest when he heard a voice behind him. Your feet are wrong. Your posture is wrong. Your breathing is wrong. Everything you're doing is wrong. He turned and saw an older individual, gray hair tied back, deep scars on his face, and 2 swords strapped to his waist. A true samurai. Yamato felt shame burn his face. I'm trying to learn on my own, sir. I have no master. The samurai walked around him, observing. How long have you been practicing? 1 year, sir. And did anything improve? Silence. The answer was obvious. The samurai took the wooden sword from Yamato's hand. You know what your problem is. You think you're training, but what you're doing is cementing mistakes. Every failed repetition is teaching your body how to fail better. Those words cut deeper than any sword. Yamato had spent a whole year getting worse. Sir, Yamato spoke, his voice breaking. How do I do it right then? I've read every text I can find. I've studied the strategies. I've memorized the moves. That's exactly your problem, the samurai interrupted. You tried to build a castle from the roof up. You studied strategy before mastering posture. You tried to innovate before imitating. You skipped the only thing that matters, the path. The samurai looked Yamato straight in the eye. There is a path to mastery that has 3 stages. You must traverse each one. You cannot skip. You cannot rush. If you try, you will spend your entire existence being mediocre in everything you touch. And which way is that? Yamato asked. Shuhari, the samurai replied. Shu, obey, ha, break, ri, let go. 3 stages, 1 destination, true mastery. Yamato was impressed. Please teach me. The samurai was silent for a long moment, then he nodded. Tomorrow at dawn, and prepare yourself, because the first stage will destroy everything you think you know about learning. Chapter 3. Shu, the death of the ego. The dawn arrived. Yamato was waiting when the samurai appeared in the clearing. Today begins Shu, the master said. At this stage, you don't think, you don't question, you don't improvise. You obey, you copy, you repeat exactly as I show you, not an inch of deviation. The samurai assumed a stance. Stay like this. Yamato imitated. The master adjusted his foot 2 centimeters to the left. He moved his hip a degree. He raised his shoulder a fraction. Now breathe. 3 seconds in through your nose. 2 seconds holding it. 4 seconds out through your mouth. They stayed in that position for 10 minutes, just breathing. Yamato's legs burned. His consciousness screamed that this was a waste of time. Master, he finally said, when are we going to practice real strikes? The samurai turned his head slowly. You think posture is boring? You think breathing is a waste of time? That's why you'll never be a samurai. A true warrior understands that mastery is built in millimeters, not kilometers. Yamato swallowed his words. Shu isn't about being interesting, the master continued. It's about obeying until your body understands what your consciousness can't yet. Every technique you'll learn in the years to come depends on this posture, this breathing, these fundamentals you think are boring. Weeks passed. Posture, breathing, basic movements repeated 1,000 times. No duels, no advanced techniques, just the basics repeated ad nauseum. Yamato's consciousness struggled with this every day. This is too slow. I could be learning real techniques. This is a waste of time. However, something was changing, something he couldn't see but could feel. His movements began to flow without conscious effort. The posture that had previously been painful now felt natural. The breathing he had to force now happy. And on its own. One day, 3 months later, the master demonstrated a basic horizontal strike. 1,000 times, he said, exactly as I did it. Not faster, not slower, not harder, identical. Yamato spent the entire week practicing that single strike, 1,000 repetitions daily. On the 4th day, something extraordinary happened. He was in the middle of strike number 400 when his body executed the movement perfectly, without any mental command, as if the sword knew the way on its own. Did you feel it? The master asked, watching from afar. Yamato nodded, speechless. This is Shu. When the technique enters the body so deeply that the consciousness no longer needs to be present. However, most individuals never get here because they think repetition is for the weak. They think they are too intelligent to practice the basics 1,000 times. A neuroscientist at the University of Tokyo who has been studying motor learning for 18 years discovered something revolutionary. When you repeat a specific movement 300 to 500 times, neurons in the cerebellum begin to create an automated pattern. After 1,000 correct repetitions, the pattern becomes unconscious. The skill literally migrates from the conscious consciousness to the brain's automatic system. However, if you change the movement before 300 repetitions, the pattern never forms. You remain forever in conscious mode, which is slow, tiring, and error-prone. Chapter 4. The Eternal Student Trap. 6 months of Shu passed. Yamato now mastered 12 basic techniques so thoroughly that he could perform them in his sleep. Literally, one night his master woke him up by surprise and asked him to perform the vertical strike. Yamato's body executed it perfectly. However, Yamato began to notice something that bothered him. He saw other practitioners, some even with more training experience. Ho knew hundreds of techniques. They knew every kata. They could name every ancient master. However, when he observed them in real combat, something was missing. They knew the movements, but the movements did not live in them. "Master," Yamato asked one morning, "why do some warriors know so many techniques but fight worse than I, who only know 12? The samurai smiled for the first time in months. "Finally, you asked the right question. These warriors live in what I call the eternal student's hell. They collect techniques like children collect toys. They learn something new before mastering the last. They read about 1,000 strategies but never internalize a single one. They confuse knowledge with mastery. However, knowledge is just having the map. Mastery is having walked the territory so many times that you no longer need the map." The master walked to a tree. "Shu gave you the foundations. You obeyed blindly. You didn't question. You didn't improvise. You just repeated until the techniques became part of you. And now," he paused, "now you are ready to break." Yamato frowned. "Break? Break what?" "Everything I taught you." Chapter 5. Ha! The Dangerous Deliverance. "In the Shu stage, you became a perfect copy of me," the master explained. "You do exactly what I do, the way I do it. That gave you the foundation. However, if you stop at that, you'll never be a true warrior. You'll just be my shadow." The samurai drew a circle on the ground. "Shu is this circle. These are the limits I have placed on you. Now comes the Ha stage, where you break this circle. However, be careful. Most individuals confuse Ha with rebellion. They break the limits not because they have mastered it, but because they are too lazy to master it. Ha is not about rejecting what you've learned. It's about understanding the why behind each technique so deeply that you can begin to adapt them. You can combine them. You can modify them. However, it only works if Shu has been complete." That afternoon, for the first time in 6 months, the master brought another instructor to the clearing, a warrior from a different school with a completely different style. "For the next year," the master said, "you will train with him too. You will learn techniques that contradict everything I've taught you. His stance is different. His strikes are different. His philosophy is different." Yamato was confused. "However, if I learn another style, won't it mess up everything you taught me?" "If Shu wasn't deep enough, yes, it will mess everything up and you will become a mediocre fighter with no identity. However, if Shu was complete, and it was, you will do something extraordinary. You will begin to see the universal principles that live beneath all styles." And so began the Ha apprenticeship. Yamato spent his mornings with his original master, his afternoons with his second instructor. The styles were so different that at first his consciousness would short-circuit trying to switch between them. The first master taught low posture, economical movements, and patient waiting. The second master taught high posture, explosive movements, and aggressive attack. Everything contradicted each other. However, after 3 months, something began to happen. Yamato began to realize that beneath the superficial differences, both masters were teaching the same thing: how to move energy through the body efficiently, how to read the opponent, how to be present in the moment. The techniques were different, the principles were identical. "You're beginning to see," his original master said when he noticed the change in Yamato's eyes. "Shu taught you the forms. Ha is teaching you the principles. When you understand the principles, the forms become tools, not prisons." A year in the Ha stage completely changed Yamato's fighting style. He was no longer a perfect copy of either master. He had Biauto Egan combining techniques in ways neither of them had. One morning during training, Yamato blocked an attack using the first master's stance, but countered with the second's explosive attack. The movement was so natural, so fluid that he didn't even realize he'd created something new until he saw the expressions on the two instructors' faces. "What was that?" the second master asked. I don't know. It just felt right." The two masters looked at each other and smiled. "Ha is complete," the first master declared. "You are no longer blindly obeying, but you are not breaking in rebellion either. You are adapting wisely. You understand the why." However, then the master said something Yamato didn't expect. And this is where 99% of practitioners stop. They arrive at Ha and think they're already masters. They can adapt techniques, they can combine styles, they can create variations, and they're proud of it. However, Ha is still a prison. You're still stuck with the techniques you've learned even if you can combine them in creative ways. You've become a skilled artist, but not a true master. There is a third stage, the final stage. and only one individual in 1,000 gets there because it requires something most individuals are unwilling to do. Forget everything. Chapter 6. Rai, the silent transcendence. Ri is the stage where you don't use techniques, the master explained. The techniques use you, or rather, there are no more techniques. There is only pure response to the moment. Yamato frowned. How can I fight without techniques? You'll understand, the master said. However, first, a story. When I was young like you, I spent 40 years studying the sword. I learned 300 techniques. I mastered 12 different styles. I became known as one of the best swordsmen in the region. One day, an old master came to challenge me. He must have been 80 years old. He could barely walk straight. I accepted the duel, thinking it would be polite. It would be quick. The master paused, the weight of memory visible on his face. He defeated me in 3 moves. And you know what confused me most? He didn't use any techniques I recognized. It wasn't style A, B, or C. It was nothing and everything at the same time. Like water, formless, yet perfectly adapted to each moment. Then he explained to me, young man, you fight well. You know many techniques, but you are still fighting. I don't fight anymore, I just respond. When you attack, my body already knows the answer before my consciousness processes it. There is no decision, there is no technique, just natural movement. Yamato tried to understand. However, how do I get to this stage? Time, practice, and most importantly, you need to stop trying. The next 5 years were the most frustrating of Yamato's existence. The master no longer taught him anything new. He just made Yamato fight every day against different opponents, different styles, different levels. At first, Yamato was still thinking about techniques. Now I use the first master's block. Now I combine it with the second master's counterattack. His consciousness was constantly categorizing, deciding, choosing. However, slowly over the years, something began to dissolve. The labels on techniques began to disappear. He stopped thinking. Now I do technique X, and started just doing it. One day during a particularly intense fight against 3 opponents simultaneously, something broke, or rather something opened. Yamato didn't remember making any decisions during that fight. His body simply flowed. He blocked, attacked, spun, dodged, all without a single conscious thought. It was like watching someone else fight using his body. When he finished, all 3 opponents were on the ground. Yamato was breathing calmly, effortlessly, and he couldn't recall any specific techniques he had used. His master was watching from afar, a rare smile on his face. You finally stopped fighting, he said. However, I fought 3 people. No, your body responded. There was no you in there making decisions. There was just pure response to the moment. This is Ri. You have transcended the techniques. They are now so deeply a part of you that you don't even know they are there. A Kyoto University researcher who has been studying embodied cognition for 22 years explains, when experts reach the highest level of mastery, something fascinating happens in the brain. Activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for conscious decisions, dramatically decreases during performance. Simultaneously, older brain structures take over. The expert is no longer doing the skill. The skill is expressing itself through him. Neurologically, it's as if the individual and the skill become one and the same. Chapter 7. The Nameless Master. Years later, Yamato was no longer the village boy with an impossible dream. He had become a respected samurai. However, more than that, he had become a master. Young individuals came from distant villages, asking to be his students, and they always asked the same question. Master, how many techniques do you know? Yamato always replied, none and all. This confused the students. They wanted numbers, they wanted lists, they wanted to know exactly what they were going to learn. However, Yamato had understood something that can only be understood after completely traversing Shuhari. Techniques are just fingers pointing to the moon. Most individuals are so obsessed with their fingers that they never look where they're pointing. One day, a particularly arrogant youth challenged him. Master, with all due respect, you say you don't know any techniques, but my old instructor knows 500 techniques. How can you be better than him? Yamato picked up a wooden sword. Attack me with any of these 500 techniques. The youth chose his best move, a complex attack he had practiced for years. Yamato didn't even seem to move much, just a slight adjustment of stance, a slight change of angle, and the youth was on the ground, weaponless, unable to understand how it had happened. "You used a technique against me just now," Yamato explained, helping the youth to his feet. "A specific technique with a name that you've practiced thousands of times. It's good. It works in most situations. However, I didn't use any technique against you. My body simply responded to your movement in the only way that particular moment required. It wasn't technique A, B, or C. It was the perfect response to that unique moment that had never existed before and will never exist again. That's the difference between knowing 500 techniques and having 0 techniques. You're limited to the 500 options you know. I have infinite options because I'm not choosing between memorized techniques. I'm creating the right answer on the fly." Chapter 8. The Universal Way. Yamato's narrative isn't just about swords and samurai, it's about anything you want to master in existence. Do you want to learn guitar? Shuhari is the way to go. Shu, you copy songs note for note exactly as they were recorded. You don't improvise. You don't add your own touch. You just imitate until the patterns sink into your fingers without thinking. Ha! You begin to combine elements of different songs, understand music theory, and see the principles behind the techniques. Re, you pick up the guitar and the music simply flows. You're no longer playing music. You've become music. Do you want to master programming? Shuhari. Shu. You copy code from experienced developers line by line. You follow established patterns without question. You build solid foundations. Ha! You begin to understand the why behind each pattern, to combine different approaches, to adapt solutions. Rai. You no longer write code consciously. You see a problem, and the solution manifests itself through your fingers. Language disappears. Only pure logic remains. Do you want to build a business? Shuhari. Shu. You study and replicate business models that work. You don't try to reinvent the wheel. You learn from those who have already done it. Ha! You begin to adapt these models to your specific niche, to see universal business principles that transcend industries. Re. You no longer follow models. You intuitively know what will work, as if your body reads the market the way a master reads an opponent. The path is always the same. Shuhari is not an ancient Japanese philosophy. It is the framework for how deep learning happens in any domain. However, there's something nobody tells you about Shuhari, something that's the real reason most individuals never achieve mastery in anything. Chapter 9. The Trap of the Modern Generation. The burning truth is this: most individuals today will never experience true mastery in anything because they refuse to go through Shu. Think about it. How many times have you heard someone say, "I don't like following rules. I prefer to find my own way. I'm more creative when I do it my way"? That sounds good, right? It sounds like independence, like original thinking, like creativity. However, it's a lie. It's your ego protecting you from the uncomfortable truth. You don't want to find your own path. You want to avoid the hard work of mastering someone else's first. Yamato could have said the same thing. "Master, why do I need to copy you exactly? Why can't I develop my own style from scratch? I'm a unique individual." And if he had done that, he wouldn't have become a samurai. He would have been just another villager who thought he was too special to learn the right way. The modern generation has been convinced of a toxic lie, that you should skip fundamentals and go straight to self-expression, that following a master is for the uncreative, that copying is for the weak, and the result? An entire generation of individuals who know a little about everything and nothing about anything. Individuals who start 47 hobbies and master none of them. Individuals who say, "I tried to learn guitar, but it wasn't for me," when in reality, they simply didn't have the patience to go through the Shu stage. Let me be brutally honest with you. No frills, no storytelling, just the pure truth. The reason you haven't yet mastered that skill you say you want to master isn't a lack of talent. It's not a lack of time. It's not a lack of resources. It's because you're trying to get started in Ha or Ri without doing Shu. You want the results of mastery without paying the cost of obsessive repetition. You want to play like a virtuoso, but you don't want to spend 6 months playing scales. You want to program like a professional, but you don't want to spend a year copying code from better programmers. You want to build an 8-figure business, but you don't want to spend 2 years studying business models that have already worked. You want to skip Shu because it's boring, because it's humiliating to admit you know nothing and have to copy someone else exactly, because our generation has sold us the lie that we are special and unique, and don't need to follow the path every master before us has followed. And as long as we continue to believe this leads, we will continue to be mediocre in everything we touch. The truth that burns. There is no shortcut. Never has been, never will be. Zen monks knew this 800 years ago. Samurai knew this 400 years ago. Every true master in any domain knows this. There is only one path. Shuhari. So here's what you need to do. Not tomorrow, not on Monday. Now. First, choose one skill. Not 3, not 5. 1. The skill that if you mastered it in the next 3 years would completely change your existence. Second, find someone who has already mastered this skill. They don't have to be the best in the world. They need to be 10 times better than you. Find that individual. If you don't know anyone who can help you personally, look for an expert online, but choose just one to follow their teachings. Third, enter the Shu stage with complete humility. You will copy this individual with obsessive precision. No adaptations, no my way, no creativity, just perfect imitation. Will it be boring? Yes. Will it feel like you've lost your identity? Yes. Will other individuals judge you and say you're being robotic? Yes. Great. That means you're doing it right. Fourth, once Shu is complete, and you'll know when it's complete because the techniques will flow without thought, then you enter Ha. Study other approaches. Combine techniques. Adapt. Create variations. Question the why. Fifth, continue for years, not months, years. This isn't a 6-month phase. It's a developmental stage that can last much longer. Keep practicing, experimenting, integrating. Sixth, one day without realizing it, you'll be in Re. You'll execute your skill without thinking. You'll create solutions you've never seen before. You'll transcend techniques. And on that day, you'll understand that the journey never ends. You'll return to the basics, but with completely new eyes. An Oxford University researcher who has been studying expertise development for 25 years conducted a study of 500 masters in different domains: music, sports, programming, martial arts, business. The finding was unanimous. Every world-class expert we studied followed the same 3-stage pattern. First, a phase of rigorous imitation lasting between 1 to 3 years. Second, a phase of experimentation and combination lasting between 3 to 7 years. Third, a phase of intuition and innovation that marks true mastery. We found not a single exception. No master skipped the first stage, even those called natural prodigies. The difference was only the speed with which they traversed each stage, never the sequence. Chapter 10. Yamato's legacy. Yamato lived to be 87. He trained hundreds of students during his lifetime. And on his last day, when he was surrounded by his most advanced students, one of them asked, "Master, what was your greatest regret on your journey?" Yamato thought for a long moment. Then he said, "My only regret is not starting Shu sooner. I wasted an entire year trying to teach myself, thinking I was intelligent enough to find a better way. If I had started with a master from day one, I would have mastered the sword a year sooner. And an extra year of mastery is a treasure no amount of gold can buy. To all of you," he continued, looking each student in the eye, "don't make my mistake. If you want to master something, find someone who has already mastered it and copy that individual without shame, without ego, without rushing to add your own personal touch. Mastery isn't about being original from day one. It's about becoming so deeply skilled that originality becomes inevitable." These were his last words about the path. And 3 days later, he died peacefully, knowing he had passed on the most important teaching he had ever received. The path doesn't end. It just transforms. And here's something very few individuals realize. You think Shuhari is about learning skills, but it's not. Shuhari is about who you become in the process of learning. The individual you are today, impatient, jumping from one thing to another, wanting results without process. That individual will never experience true mastery. However, there's another version of you, a version that has the patience to copy perfectly, that has the humility to admit it knows nothing, that has the discipline to practice the same thing 1,000 times, that has the wisdom to understand that the long road is the fast road. This version of you already exists, waiting for you to stop looking for shortcuts, waiting for you to accept the only path that works. Shuhari isn't just an ancient Japanese learning method, it's a mirror. And what you see when you look into that mirror tells you everything about who you'll be in 5 years. Do you see someone willing to start as a complete beginner without ego, without rushing? Or do you see someone still looking for the hack, the shortcut, the way to avoid the work? Because only one of these individuals will truly master something, and you know which one it is. The question is not, does the Shuhari framework work? The question is, are you willing to pay the cost that mastery demands? Yamato was just a village boy. No special talent, no noble lineage, no advantages. The only thing he had was a willingness to obey completely before questioning, to imitate perfectly before innovating, to master the basics before seeking the advanced. And this transformed him from a nobody into a master whose name was remembered for centuries. You have the same choice he had. The same path is open to you. Do you want to spend the next 5 years trying to find a better way that doesn't exist, and 5 years from now be exactly where you are today, knowing a little about a lot of things and nothing about anything? Or would you rather pay the cost of mastery and become extraordinary at whatever you set out to do? Mastery is waiting, but it won't find you. You have to walk to it step by step, repetition by repetition. Shu, then ha, then ri. The path is ancient, the path is tested, the path works. If this video brought you new teachings about learning and mastery, I invite you again to subscribe to the channel now and activate the bell so you don't miss the next content. And tell me in the comments, what's one skill you'll master using Shuhari? Write it down below. Also, I have another invitation for you. If you enjoy content related to psychology and philosophy, I'll leave the link to my new channel in the video description where I'm publishing content on these topics. It's still a very small channel, but I'm working hard to bring good content there too. If you've made it this far, thank you tremendously for your attention. You're one of the few who are truly willing to learn, and that already separates you from 99% of individuals. Now, go ahead and get started. Enter Shu. And years from now, you'll look back and won't believe you were the same individual. Until the next video, and happy journey in your transformation.